Story 1. I work at a middle school as an 8th grade math teacher. Some of you may assume that means I'm like 38 or something, but I'm actually only 26 when I was hired as a tether. Let's say, if I'm mature or anything, just that I was 10 or 20 years older, I may have handled things differently. Of course, this happened during a period that I was teaching a class. The math wing in our school is closest to the lobby. Remember it like it was yesterday. Down to the equation I was writing on the board, and when the lockdown alarm suddenly sounded. It wasn't a drill. All faculty and students are taught which alarms mean what. And this was the alarm that meant go into lockdown for real, not a drill. I hurried to the door to lock it. Each door in the building has a big glass panel in it though, so the doors have a little blind that you could pull down to cover this. Even though we're not supposed to pull down the blinds during lockdowns, we're also supposed to instruct students to hide in one corner of the room with the lights off because they turned off the lights in the classroom. I told the students to go hide in the corner of the room where we would be least visible and audible from the door. I saw the lights in the hallways dim to just the backup lights, something I'd never seen before till that point. I was slightly worried because I knew this had to be serious. And like I said, my class is right by the lobby. My classroom is one of the first classrooms you pass as you're going through one of the 2 hallways of the lobby. I was curious, so using the classroom phone, I called the front office. They didn't pick up after 4 rings, so I hung up. I wasn't endangering anyone to my knowledge, because the front office is behind 2 doors and the phone wouldn't be heard from the lobby. But still, not picking up was concerning. There was suddenly a knocking on the door. Frantic, panicked knocking accompanied with someone on the other side of the door, begging to be let in. Wasn't a student voice, was way too deep. Sounded to me like a guy in his early 20s, I had to guess. I went to the door quietly, saw the person's shadow on the other side of the blind. He started saying he could see me through the blind and knew I could hear him. He kept saying, "Let me in the scared-sounding kind of whispery voice, and looked at my students. Some of them had scared, confused looks on their faces. I signaled for them to keep quiet and asked through the door who was there. "What's your name?" He said his name was Cody and that he was a student and needed to get into the classroom because he felt unsafe in the halls. He told me this. I noticed he seems to be trying to talk in a slightly higher pitch. I wasn't falling for it. There was no way that voice belonged to a middle schooler. I ignored him and went back to the corner with my students. The guy on the other side of the door started knocking, fiddling with the doorknob, and then kind of thrashing at the dorms, all while still saying, "Help, let me in." I did my best to keep my students from screaming or freaking out. The guy eventually gave up and the noises stopped. We stayed in lockdown for half an hour before an announcement was made that police had searched the building and it was safe. So later on, faculty was given more details. Apparently some 20-something-year-old guy with long hair down to his shoulders was walking around the school with a small handgun. Whether it was a real gun or not remains unknown, but the guy was caught on camera, leaving the building through a back exit, and he was found by police 2 hours later, not holding the gun. I think I could have handled the situation a little better. For example, not even answering the guy when he was at the door. But I was so nervous that I really wasn't thinking logically, scared to think about what might have transpired if I opened the door for him. Story 2. It was the 9th period, the day of the school day, senior year of high school. The 9th period was one of my off periods, so my school day would be a little shorter. A couple of my friends also had their schedules set up that way. Ryan and Scott are the 3rd friends. Tyler had off 9 periods every other day. This was one of the days he didn't have all, but since it was Friday and a nice day out, we were all texting each other, making plans to hit the beach. Tyler was talking about sneaking out of Generally to come with us. So we were waiting in the hallway by the gym. This hall was in the far corner of the school. The only people passing were students going to gym class. Tyler texted us that he was just going to wait till the gym teacher took attendance, and slipped back to the locker room and waited there for a decent minute. He was taking a while for some reason. There's a set of exit doors at the end of the gym hall, we were standing in. It wasn't supposed to be used as an entrance, and here came some guy through the doors. Even though it was a really nice day out, this guy came through the 2 doors in the home wearing black sweatpants and a black zipper-up hoodie with the hood over his head. He was also wearing a black backpack. He went silent as he walked past us, making a point of looking at all 3 of us with this dagger of a stare, stepped up and said, "What to call?" The guy stopped in his tracks and turned to face Ryan and asked him if he's got a problem with Scott. And I stuck to that, just said forget it over and over, until the guy turned and kept walking. We all agreed that guy seemed extremely sketchy. Like you could have been a student. None of us recognized the little facial hair, but it was kind of patchy. A few minutes later, I texted him asking him to hurry up, and he texted back he couldn't sneak out just yet since we're in lockdown, trying to us because we weren't aware of this. He said the gym teachers announced it and everyone was hiding in the locker rooms. We also just realized the door separating the gym hallway from the actual locker room hallway was closed and locked. Immediately awaited till that creepy-looking dude dressed in all black and just walked past us. The reality hit us so much harder when there were these popping sounds from that one of the hallways. Firstly sounded like maybe a teacher slamming books on the desk as if to wake a student up or something. But we quickly put 2 and 2 together, realized they were gunshots. The sounds of students screaming quickly followed. Next thing we knew, we saw that guy in black appeared down the hall, was running full speed towards us. The 3 of us ran out the 2 doors that the guy entered from, and all the way to the woods. Next to that moment, I felt the curtains of life slowly closing, the thought of death. In reality, we looked back twice as we saw that guy was chasing us, but he was kind of far away. He screamed at us, most of it inaudible, but I did make out him saying, "I'm going to kill you." We made it to the woods by half of the fence that surrounds the perimeter of the school. Whenever we had a nice shield of trees covering us from view, we started to catch our breath. We decided to wait it out, laying flat on the ground to avoid detection. We then heard footsteps nearby. The guy, louder and louder, so I could see him running through the woods looking for us. He ran further away from us, not noticing us. When he was out of sight, we all agreed to run back to the senior parking lot. During the running and the shock of the near-death experience we just had, I don't know how I didn't bother. We got to my car and I drove all 3 of us to my house. Obviously, the beach idea was out the window now, and later blew up on social media or high school class group chat. That one of the teachers was shot by the guy was sent to the hospital in ambulance. He survived, but everyone thought he was going to die, considering he got shot twice. No one knows who that guy was or why he targeted that one specific feature. Sure, he went after us because Ryan antagonized, probably waited to come back for us when Ryan specifically because he didn't want to alert the whole school that gunshot, who knows. Now, wouldn't have really mattered anyway because the school was already tipped off by a nearby house about him because he was seen hissing on their property before going to the school. Not to mention the way he was dressed on an 80-degree day. I consider this a near-death experience and I count my lucky stars I survived. Story 3. I was in my first year of teaching at the local high school when I had one of the scariest experiences of my life. It was my planning period, so I was alone in my classroom grading papers while sneaking in a bit while the kids were making their way to the cafeteria. There was a lot of noise in the hallway. All of a sudden, I heard 3 sharp bangs and then tons of screaming. Received a notification on my phone that there was an active shooter in the building. I sprinted to the door and flung it open. There were math papers were flying and students were running in all different directions. I began yelling at them to come. One student after another entered the classroom. Probably had more than 30 kids huddled in the back once. Then shut off the lights and directed a few of the male students nearby to help me barricade the door, and then joined the rest of the students at the back of the room and told everyone to stay as quiet as possible. The minutes ticked by and there was nothing but silence. Surely, at least I tried my best, as students come as we waited. I had got another notification on my phone from the school administration. They had been able to get a description of the alleged shooter. It was a male student. He was wearing bright red, See if anyone has seen someone today. Maybe we could pass the information on to the police. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, I noticed something that caused by my classroom with a black-gray skeleton, and he was wearing bright red shoes. He appeared somber and sad, away from the other students, just staring at the ground. My heart was and I was terrified, but I want to show that I knew the alleged shooter was in the classroom, so I tried to not let my expression change. I simply grabbed my phone and sent a quick text to the principal, letting them know the situation in only minutes. We heard loud banging out the door. It was the SWAT team. They told us to slowly exit the classroom with our hands raised. We unbarricaded the door and did as we were told. The boy who fit the description attempted to run but was quickly detained by an officer. It was later reported that the boy, 3 shots were fired, the shooter, and hoped that he got help. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Drop a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Sleep tight.